Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, episode 27. Babiak, how are we doing?
Good. It's been a minute for us recording an episode, but it's been since the invention of the iPhone that the Carolina Hurricanes have won a third-round playoff game. So really, our time gap, not that bad.
He brings it. He brings it with the pre-prepared facts. Yeah, sorry that we haven't recorded in a while. It falls on me. I went to Winnipeg last week, picked up this nice South Asian heritage Winnipeg Jets hoodie, and then I got sick, like basically Monday. Started coughing. I might cough on this, cough all over Babiak. But we got a shit ton to talk about as a result now that it's been like almost over 2 weeks, including my New York Islanders hiring Matthew Darche. Tocchet got the Flyers job. Quenneville got the Anaheim Ducks coaching job. Holland is heading to L.A. And then we're just going to talk about, recap the second round and kind of look at the conference finals, what has happened thus far. A decent amount. Let's get into it. Up first, my New York Islanders made, in my opinion, the right call. Matthew Darche, the assistant general manager and director of hockey operations of the Tampa Bay Lightning from 2019 to 2025. I said throughout this process I wanted a guy that was relatively young, that was around success prior. I'm not going to sit here and act like Darche was the real mastermind. Brisebois was just a figurehead for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but he was responsible for mainly keeping the salary cap within structure for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's a team that does like the wildest shit possible. So he was very hands-on and then just continued to grow in that role to basically run the organization to a degree. And they're probably not going to hire a president at this point, thankfully. No Brendan Shanahan. I think Darche just getting full control compared to bringing in some guy that maybe has experience, but didn't really have that much experience come playoff time. And Brendan Shanahan, it makes sense. What do you think? What's your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts are I like it quite a bit. You know, get someone in, new blood, but with history of success, studying under someone who's been very good, Brisebois. So it's, a good opportunity, I think. He's going to be hungry to prove that he can do things on his own. Studying under someone who's been good is much better to me than recycling someone who's been bad. I really have no idea. None of us will know until he starts doing something. But on paper, it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, it is kind of a mystery box to a degree, but I'd rather have that than Ken Holland that could not draft or develop for the life of him in Edmonton, and towards the end with Detroit. Jarmo Kekalainen, although Columbus is a tough job, did not have really any success outside of 2019. Bergevin had some of the most like egregious draft picks and trades of all time. Shanahan wouldn't have been the end of the world. The problem with him was he built a good culture, but he did it in Toronto, the biggest hockey market, and he was just too stubborn. And especially with this Islanders core, you cannot be stubborn. I need big changes. I don't care if he tries to win now, moves off Pajot to try to get a Mitch Marner in free agency, tries to do a 1 to 2 year retool, or like fully fucking blows it up. I just need big changes to a degree. You cannot run back this team. So as long as he's bold, as long as he has a vision that includes serious change, I'm on board.
I agree with most of that. I do think Shanahan would have been a disaster. I saw you posting several times about how, Shanahan might be a logical fit for the Islanders. It would have been logical, but I think it would have been horrible. I frankly mostly blame Shanahan for how much Toronto's failed. From where I'm sitting, it seems to me to be a big case of, Dubas, a decent GM who was trying to make the best of an intensely limiting situation. Shanahan is the epitome of a guy who's not going to change anything or do anything drastic. He's very much in the what Lou did with the Islanders' reign of we would rather overpay to keep running back the same mediocre team than take any risk, do anything different. So I do think recycling Shanahan would have been like actually the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, we'll dive into the Toronto Maple Leafs stuff more when we get to their yet again epic failure. But yeah, I think Darche is going to be willing to make the tough decisions, considering last offseason shipped out Mikhail Sergachev in a huge deal. They basically told Steven Stamkos, you're our all-time GOAT, but we're not giving you a serious contract. Go to Nashville and score irrelevant goals and regress there. So yeah, Tampa is about as cutting edge as it gets in terms of being aggressive, in terms of being cutthroat. And I think the Islanders really need that. I think Lou Lamoriello brought in a good culture for the Islanders, but it was kind of like a familial culture where he wasn't willing to make big changes outside of eventually trading Brock Nelson. And when looking at the Islanders this summer, they thankfully do have a lot of salary cap and a lot of uncertainty where there could be serious change. $26.5 million in salary cap space with Dobson, Romanov, Siplikov, Palmieri, and Holmstrom as free agents. Pajot, one more year at $5 million. I think you could easily trade him. with the first overall pick, of course. I don't know if Darche takes this like a month ago if they don't have that first overall pick, because you're potentially getting a franchise defenseman or a number one center, especially in terms of that could exceed what they currently have in terms of Noah Dobson or Bo Horvat in those positions. So yeah, it's a much better job than it was 12 months ago. I'm gonna have a YouTube video essay really diving into that on later today or maybe tomorrow. But I'm just really excited. It was kind of a shit show, the overall process. It took like a full month, and just candidates came in, came out, and that was kind of a disaster. But thankfully, we now have an adult in the room. Ledecky and Malkin go back to kind of just being in the shadows, and Matthew Darche, the Darche era, the Darche days are upon us.
The process is fine. I mean, nothing was really happening over the last month. There was not that urgency that you need a GM right this minute. They took their time. They figured out the best solution. To me, that's a much better process than being overly hasty with it and throwing a lot of money at Jarmo just to say you did something in a day.
Yeah, when it initially came out, it was all the worst names. Holland, Bergevin, Kakalainen. I had Darche as like a pipe dream. And then just slowly and steadily, he just stayed in it. And now he's going to be running my New York Islanders. You want to move on to Rick Tocchet in the Philadelphia Flyers?
Let's.
Yeah, Rick Tocchet, the most attractive free agent in terms of coaching after Mike Sullivan got the Rangers job. I don't think it's that justified. I think Rick Tocchet's like a good coach. I think he's an upgrade over John Tortorella. But it makes sense from a degree considering he's a former Philadelphia Flyers player, of course, familiar with the organization. Do I think that this massively changes the Philadelphia Flyers outlook going forward? Not too much, but at the end of the day, I don't expect Rick Tocchet to be benching Matvei Michkov, to be benching their young guys. And I think for Danny Briere, he's definitely an upgrade. Not saying Danny Briere is on some kind of hot seat, but it would have been a little bit bold to take a complete swing on an unknown. You bring in a guy like Rick Tocchet that is pretty beloved by his players, seems to kind of be more so of a player's coach. So I like it to a degree.
I do want to lock in on, Danny Briere talking about his hot seat. Rick Tocchet, former Flyers player. The Flyers have spent the last decade only hiring former Flyers players for all of these positions, which I do think has been to their detriment. I do think that's an issue with the team's overall culture, and taking a step outside of that would probably help. As far as Rick Tocchet as a coach, I feel not strongly one way or the other. He does seem to have this amazing reputation in the league, which kind of makes me ask, like, why, for what? He's been an NHL coach for 9 seasons now in 3 different cities. He's accomplished basically nothing at any point in his career. Like, I'm not calling him a terrible coach. He spent, all that time in Arizona with an awful roster and did guide them through the rebuilds. He had 1 nice year in Vancouver, but it is very strange to me, like, where did this amazing, he's such a good coach reputation come from? Because, again, he's been a head coach for 9 years for 3 different teams, and he's won 1 playoff series in that time. He's had 100-point season in that time. Like, is he a good coach? From the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like there's any actual evidence of that.
Yeah, it's really hinging on that 2024 season that we kind of saw the following year, although a lot also went wrong in that following up season. But that 2024 season was fake to a degree. Their PDO was like 103.
That too. I mean, is he a great players coach? Because we just saw him be the head coach of the most disastrous locker room team culture collapse in recent memory. Certainly the most public one I can think of. So, like, is he a guy who the players will get around and love? Because, like, 6 months ago, I'm not saying it was his fault necessarily, but, 6 months ago, his team's 2 best forwards got in such a nasty and public feud that Vancouver needed to trade away a superstar for pennies on the dollar. He's seen the regression of Elias Pettersson, which more than offsets any, upgrades, progressions we've seen from the development guys. It's a whatever hire. I mean, maybe it'll work out fine. I don't see Philly being playoff competitive for several years, no matter who you hire as coach. So getting someone in to reset the culture will help. but is a former Flyers player who just oversaw a nasty team culture going to help with that? I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I think this is to a degree a culture hire. Bring back some of the former great players of the Philadelphia Flyers and just get stability across the organization. What this kind of maybe makes me believe is that Philadelphia might be a little bit aggressive this summer. I don't think Tocchet is taking this job if it's fully like we're still deep in the rebuild. We're still 2 to 3 years away from actually being in the playoffs. And they do have the assets to do something. I'm not saying that they're going to completely transform this team next season, but I think he is going to do something. Briere is going to do something decently aggressive in terms of probably improving this forward core. They have 3 first-round picks. I know 2 of them are late firsts, but they have 4 second-round picks. So I think that this hire does, to a degree, not saying there's massive pressure. I think Tocchet also took this job because he knew he could have got fired relatively soon in Vancouver, even if he signed an extension because they were trending so bad. But I think that this is a starting point where next season they fully expect to exit the rebuild, because it has been since 2020 that they've made the playoffs. They were somewhat in the race last year in terms of making the playoffs.
I think that would be disastrous.
What? I'm not saying trade like
jumping
the
ahead
6th overall pick this year. I'm saying trade one of your late firsts and one of your mid seconds to get immediate help. And I'm not talking like a 31-year-old like that's on a egregious deal or something like that and spending to the cap completely. But I think in terms of taking a swing like on some kind of guy that's 26, 27 years old. A Trevor Zegras buy low. Sorry, a Trevor Zegras buy low kind of guy or something like that.
And I'm saying I don't think the team is remotely close enough. I mean, you talk about exiting the rebuild. I'm not convinced they ever did rebuild truly, right? I mean, they spent the last
year fucked them.
They spent the last 3 or 4 years with a very bad roster trying to stay afloat with a 70-point, 80-point team. The Tocchet hire probably does mean they're going to look for a similar approach. I agree that Briere's outlook is probably leaning more towards doing something to try and retool quick, but I think that's absolutely the wrong move for this franchise. I mean, you can do something that wouldn't jeopardize the future at all. Give Nikolai Ehlers a big 7-year contract. Trade 2 seconds for Zegras, right? Those are good players. They're young enough to kind of fit your window. But you could add both of those guys and still be a really bad team next year. I don't think they would be even in the discussion for the playoffs with both of those adds.
I agree. Next season, the goal should be like high 70s, low 80s. Matvei Michkov's a point per game forward. That would be a successful season. I'm just saying I can't see Tocchet taking this job and Briere being like, we're committed to fucking suck next year. I know that there's going to be a decent tank race next year for a guy like Gavin McKenna, and even the 2 through 4 of that draft is looking like it could be better than the top 2 in this draft. But yeah, they finally have the assets, and it is tough for the Flyers because they did get absolutely fucked by Cutter Gauthier. Like, we can agree on that.
They did.
Like, if they had Gauthier right now, not saying that would be night and day in terms of their rebuild, but they got Drysdale. I almost said Draisaitl. Drysdale in a 2nd-round pick for him. Drysdale's barely an NHL defenseman, in my opinion. Like, he's a 3rd-pair offensive guy, and that second is going to be 40th overall. So, like, that really hampered them this season. Hopefully they can snag a legit potential future number 1 center. You sign a decent forward like Nikolai Ehlers, and they could be at least a fun offensive team next year that still stinks, and they still get a top 10 pick. And then the following year, maybe you try for the playoffs.
What's really hampered them, in my opinion, is their refusal to ever bottom out. They don't have, I mean, the fact that Michkov fell to them at, what was it, number 7 they ended up getting him, phenomenal. The only thing keeping their retool afloat right now, because otherwise they've refused to bottom out. They have no top 5 draft picks to show for it in this era of being pretty bad. They're not going to add one this year. They're probably not going to add one next year. I think the Phillies' overall direction is directionless right now. They seem like they're trying to stay afloat, and they don't remotely have the pieces to make that work, but they refuse to actually do a full rebuild.
Yeah, I think it's obviously tough because Konechny is a very good player, but if they really wanted to nuke it, they should have traded him when he had like a year and a half left. They could have got like the equivalent of 2 first-round picks, like a first-round pick and like a B+, A- prospect. And also, like, I hate to hark on the past, but, like, if they kept Gauthier, if they drafted Zeev Boyum 12th overall instead of trading back 1 pick and taking Luchenko, if they had a young core of Michkov, Boyum, and Gauthier, we were talking about it. And the 6th overall pick this year, they look damn good.
Do they even with that?
That would be a great
Who's their 1C?
This year, they get a Caleb Desnoyers, they get a James Higgins and Anton Frundell. They still got a 6th overall pick this year. Like, they're still good at. Like
You're gonna add decent talent. I'm
I'm ripping out the hypothetical games. I know, but like some of the things, I still can't believe the Jet Luchenko pick. That's absolutely egregious. He's gonna be like a good third line center. In
you got
the
some
NHL.
Jet Luchenko stands in the comments every time we talk about him,
dude. Yeah, he made the opening roster. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Fucking bunch of players do, and then they don't turn into anything. It's ridiculous. Sorry, your team sucks, and he made this opening night roster, and then he was like point per game at the OHL level. Like Jesus. You want to move on?
Let's move on. This is too much.
We'll move on. Speaking of Kanagotia, he got a new coach. He got Joe Quenneville is heading to the Anaheim Ducks. Yeah. This is let's get a little bit serious for a second. My stance has been pretty consistent. I don't think that he should be coaching in the NHL. I don't think he's as much at fault as Stan Bowman. Him getting a job is completely egregious based on the Kyle Beach, what happened there in terms of the cover-up. According to Bowman's report, Bowman recalled that after learning the incident, Quenneville shook his head and said that it was hard for the team to get where they are now, and they cannot deal with this issue right now. He later went on to say that he didn't even know it until like 2020 or 2021 when it came out. So just from that, like, being a head coach in the NHL is a privilege. It's not a right. There's only 32 of the jobs in the NHL, and I think after something like that, he should no longer have been a coach in the NHL. He only sat out 4 years, and he was able to coach for 11 years after that incident. So that aside, I know people are going to get pissed off about that. That's just my personal opinion. When looking at him as an actual coach, it objectively is a very good hire. When looking at how he developed the young core in Chicago, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, into legit superstars. And even in Florida, he completely changed the culture around alongside Bill Zito. They went from, although Huberdeau and Barkov were established good players at that point, they really took steps under him, going from an 86-point team to eventually in 2021 being a 116-point pace team. He's hopefully going to learn from his mistakes from Chicago. He already was kind of a player's coach, and I think that that is a big step in the right direction for the Anaheim Ducks, considering Cronin was the exact opposite of that. So off the ice, not a fan of the hire. On the ice, I think it is a slam dunk for the Anaheim Ducks, and for a team that was so bad this year outside of goaltending, they were third to last in the NHL. Only San Jose and Chicago were worse in terms of 5-on-5 in all situations expected goals percentage. They sucked. Cronin's system sucked. They were an 80-point team. If the goaltending can be good next year, if he can improve on their overall system and just 5-on-5 play, not a playoff team, but I think they could be an 85-ish, 90-point team. And yeah, you just got to hope Quenneville learned from this. I assume that he did. He said that he talked to a bunch of people in terms of growing as a person. It's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, Pat Verbeek might be on a little bit of a hot seat, and he had to make a tough call. I wouldn't have personally. What do you think?
I don't like it very much. The optics are definitely bad, especially for a young team. It's hard to square what we know about Quenneville as a coach who, when he started with Chicago, he inherited a very young team, and they did grow a lot under him. But squaring that, the players coach, the supporting the youth, with what happened to a first-round pick of that team who was cast aside. Beyond that, I actually don't think he deserves any credit for his Florida coaching job. He was the head coach for 2 years there, didn't win a playoff series in either year. His immediate interim replacement won the President's Trophy. The real coach they hired the next year won the Stanley Cup within 2 seasons. Just objectively speaking there, the coaches after him in Florida had much more success.
When he inherited it, they were, in 2016, they had a good season, lost to John Tavares in a Game 7 overtime winner, but they were far too inconsistent before him. They had one great season, then kind of came crashing down and missed the playoffs by 10 points. So I get what you're saying, but also Bill Zito did not fully make all those moves until after.
Oh,
like
for
Bill
sure.
Zito's
The team,
Reinhart
changed.
trade.
It was fluid throughout. But, it is worth saying, I think, that Paul Maurice and even Andrew Brunette had much more success in Florida than Quenneville did in a very short window.
They did start 7-0 in 2021, 2022.
They did.
So they were better. I got to stop defending Quenneville. You go.
I don't know. I mean, it's possible that, Quenneville as a head coach was really a right place, right time, right group of guys with that Chicago era, and it might not transfer over so well to other teams.
He got the job, I think, in like 2008, 2009. So they were already drafted. They were already good NHLers. I'm not acting like Patrick Kane in his rookie year had 35 points and then Quenneville absolutely like saved his ass. But yeah, I just think, anything was really going to be an upgrade over Cronin.
Over Cronin, anything.
Yes.
They could have hired Mike Babcock, and I would be saying, they needed to do something and get Cronin out of there.
Yeah, but like for the most part, they have the young core locked in. Carlson, Lacombe, Mitnikov, Zellweger, McTavish, Terry, Dostal, Zegras might be part of a
Every single one of those players had a flat or down season last year, except Dostal. But generally speaking, the head coach has no impact over what a goalie's doing. Every single one of those skaters under Cronin was either flat or down last year.
So I think with Quenneville, with the experience that he's had developing some of these young guys previously at prior stops, I think it is going to be really interesting when looking at it. He is going to be that kind of structure for them while also being not an asshole like Cronin, a guy that they can actually like talk back to and not be scared to death of. So I like it a decent amount on the ice. Obviously, it is just unfortunate because I like the Ducks a lot, and for them to do this kind of stinks.
Yeah, I don't know if Verbeek's on the hot seat necessarily. It's tough to say because it feels like he's done a really good job, A, drafting in non-slam dunk pick spots, B, making sharp trades for decent young players. The Trouba move was baffling, but, turning off Drysdale when he did looks great in hindsight. But that's all in theory building this young core. And then the actual results are any of these young players actually that good? I certainly think at bare minimum, both McTavish and Leo Carlson are that good and will be that good. The rest of the guys, it's kind of an open question. Like, is Owen Zellweger a real, legit piece?
Or was he just an AHL demon? What was I about to say? For Verbeek, I think he realized that the results last year were kind of fugazi just because the goaltending tandem. I'm not saying the goaltending tandem is not going to be good next year, but I think they combined for 30 goals saved above expected. They were responsible for that 21-point jump. So for the casual, they were shocked that Cronin was fired because they did go from 59 to 80 points. But anybody that actually watched Ducks hockey, anybody that looked at the stats knew that their young guys completely stalled out in that just at 5-on-5, they got completely caved in. So yeah, I think Verbeek did realize that, if the goaltending tandem next year does not step up the same way, we're probably a 73, 74-point team. So he needed to do something big in terms of saving his job. I don't think that he'd get fired next year unless they completely regress to 70-ish points, but he's definitely on a 2-year hot seat, considering I think he got the job in 2020 or 2021. He's been there for a while, and he did inherit a team that came off such a successful run. It was kind of similarly to a Detroit Red Wings, a tear it down completely. But we are in year 4, year 5 of this at this point, and I think Ducks fans are expecting to relatively, especially when you re-sign a guy like Vetrano instead of trading him for a first-round pick, that's telling me that you expected this team to be competing at a decently high level as soon as next year for the most part.
That makes sense to me. I mean, for everyone's sake there, I hope it does work out because on paper, they should be this fun team to watch. And in reality, they're just not. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Okay, sticking in the Los Angeles area, the Los Angeles Kings have a new general manager as Ken Holland, former Edmonton Oilers general manager, has taken the job. To me, I don't love it, but this is LA just saying we're going for it the next 3 to 4 years. When you look at Holland's track record as general manager for the Edmonton Oilers and at the end with Detroit Red Wings, once he lost to Jim Nill, one of the worst drafters or developers in the entire NHL. So I think that this is LA trusting that he can pull out some Matthias Ekholm, Zach Hyman kind of signings compared to say the Darnell Nurse extension or Jack Campbell's free agency deal. Because at the end of the day, although Edmonton, there should have been more success, he did have some success to a degree. He did make some really good moves. And I think for Los Angeles, they're desperate. They're desperate to try to go on one last run with Kopitar, with Doughty. So although, again, Holland, not my choice for the New York Islanders job, and I wouldn't have been my choice for the Los Angeles Kings job, I definitely understand them not going with a first-time guy, considering this core is not all in by any stretch, but definitely needs a real shakeup in terms of being aggressive, winning now after 4 straight first-round exits. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are Ken Holland's just not a very good GM. I think it's ridiculous between Ken Holland and Lou Lamoriello how people will talk about GMs who had a ton of success before the salary cap existed and then assume that because they were good GMs in that era, they're still equally good GMs in the salary cap era, as if managing the salary cap doesn't fundamentally change how the whole job worked. Like, that's the most important part of the job now. The old most important part of the job, when Ken Holland actually had his success, was mass recruiting. I mean, the payroll on those early 2000s Detroit Red Wings teams was, they spent more money in 2002 than the Coyotes were spending in the 2020s on payrolls there. Like, I'm not saying his job was remarkably easy. It takes effort to recruit guys and manage egos, manage salary structures in that kind of a system. But, like, let's be super clear that all of Ken Holland's actual success came in an era where he was spending $30 or $40 million more on player salaries than, not even than the bottom feeders, than the teams that Detroit would be playing in the first round of the playoffs. He was good under that system. He was very bad after it. The main mark of Ken Holland's Detroit tenure in the salary cap era was just a refusal to do any kind of rebuild, retool. We're going to hold our core guys until the end of their career, not try to get any assets for them, which has resulted in a full decade of darkness over there. His Edmonton tenure, I love the Ekholm trade, but it's been mostly bad. I mean, as you said, the Jack Campbell contract, totally disastrous. And people just seem to forget about that real quickly once he's off the team, as if multiple years of McDry's prime weren't wasted by having that dead cap hit there.
During the fly cap, yeah.
LA's big issue, frankly, as far as their team goes, is we need more high-end scoring, which Ken Holland has never shown the ability to figure out real solutions for scoring. I mean, Zach Hyman, a phenomenal one-year fit as a passenger for McDavid, but, like, that's all he is. Let's be very serious about that.
Gonna get some hate for that.
That, and, LA's consistently struggling to find goalies. They have a constant revolving door. Darcy Kuemper, great this year until the playoffs when he wasn't. And anyways, he's old enough where that's not a long-term solution by any means, which means you're going to have to go looking for a goalie soon. And Ken Holland has really, really struggled everywhere. He's struggled finding goalies. I mean, his Detroit reign, even when Detroit was doing phenomenally in the salary cap era, they were getting by with, good enough goalies. Chris Osgood is good enough to survive with a loaded team. Every goalie after him, just a revolving door of mediocrity. So I don't think he's the guy to fix this team. I don't think Rob Blake was either, to be fair, but at least Rob Blake was not afraid of taking swings to try and fix the scoring issues, right? Fiala for Brock Faber. I don't know if history is going to end up looking kindly on that deal.
Nobody thought Brock Faber was going to turn into what he eventually did.
But he took the swing there. The Dubois trade, clearly a disaster, but again, he was willing to take a swing and try to bring in high-end scoring. So Ken Holland's going to have to do something similar. I don't think he has the skill to pull it off, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think my fear is your boy Spence or Brant Clark might be on their way out. If he's not going to play them, if he's going to re-sign Gavrikov to some kind of big deal, which I think that he should because Gavrikov was so good this season, their only real of value. Liam Greentree is a good prospect, and they do have all their picks for the most part, but if they really want to improve this team, it might cost a Brant Clark. It might cost a lot for air.
Which would be, it's so frustrating to me because if your issue is we need to generate offense, having Brant Clark, having a potential legit first pair puck moving defenseman is really important. No one has any questions about the defensive side of LA's D-core. If they keep Gavrikov around, which I assume they'll at least try to do. Between him, Doughty, Mikey Anderson, you have a really solid defensive team there. What you don't have a ton of are puck movers. Doughty's much older these days. He's not the puck mover he was. Everyone else who actually gets minutes there is very defense first. If you want to try generating offense, doing it from the blue line with very good young players you already have makes sense. But for whatever reason, LA doesn't seem very interested in playing either of Spencer Clark very many minutes. So it seems, honestly, the way things are going, you're probably right that you look at what actual assets do they have to bring in a high-end scorer, Clark and or Spence will be pretty high on that list.
Yeah, it's not a bad job, it's not a good job. They're just kind of stuck in the middle, and especially looking at this summer, there's really nobody that like that of note that really looks like they potentially want out. People throw out Tage Thompson's name because he's in Buffalo. Don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to run it back definitely for another year, considering they're bringing back Kevin Adams. There's just no one out there compared to off seasons past where there was a Fiala. Rob Blake took that opportunity. There was a PLD, which again, it aged bad, but in the moment we thought that he was at least going to be worth $7.5, $8 million in his first season, and now he is. But like, there's really nothing. So that scares me that that Ken Holland is going to force some kind of move from some older team in terms of bringing in some scoring. They're just this team that is perfectly good. And based on the fact that Kopitar and Doughty, rightfully so, are just going to retire there most likely. They're going to try to win the next 2 to 3 years with them. I really just don't see a path to them potentially. As we talked about before, they have these weird core ages of 21 to 24, then 28 to 30, and then the two older guys. They're just in a really interesting situation. They do have some money to spend. They could potentially, if they traded Lafreniere for someone far cheaper, just pick some prospects, they could bring in like a Mitch Marner. But again, their problem is not making the playoffs, so I don't even know if I love him potentially in Los Angeles. Their problem is once they get to the playoffs, having guys that elevate their game to a degree. And as you mentioned with Darcy Kemper, they do have some good goalie prospects in terms of Carter George and Eric Portillo, but in the next 2 to 3 years, I don't expect those guys to be high-level impact goalies. So yeah, it seems like they just brought him in to change things up, to bring the harbinger of chaos almost, to just try to throw something at the wall, considering Rob Blake's tenure ended pretty disappointingly.
The big thing I'm looking at is Adrian Kempe has 1 year left on his contract. Your team is very good right now. Kempe, probably your best offensive player. No need to say probably in front of that. He is your best offensive player. Not necessarily best forward, but best at producing goals. You either need to extend him or maybe trade him as part of a creative package for another star-level forward, because you cannot afford to lose him in free agency for nothing after another season where you make the playoffs and lose in the first round.
Yeah, it really sucks that apparently Mikko Rantanen didn't want to go there, because I would have thrown everything at the wall to potentially bring in Mikko Rantanen, as we're seeing now, a legit top 20 player in the NHL. I'd expect them to re-sign Adrian Kempe. I cannot see them potentially packaging, because again, I don't know who the hell would be available this offseason. I think it just would be trading one of those young guys that eventually will get to that level that we think that they will, like a Brant Clark, for immediate help. Will it work? Probably not. I think Edmonton and Dallas next year seem to be better. I'd take Colorado over them. Vegas, I think, will get creative in terms of an offseason. They're psychopaths. So, yeah, for LA, it just seems like another 101-point season next year, unless Ken Holland does something nuts.
I hope he does do something nuts.
Me too.
I
really hope
they have several directions they could go in. They could be fun to watch.
You want to move on to the Leafs versus the Panthers, more so just talking about the Leafs, what the hell they should do this summer.
All about it, yeah.
So, yeah, this series, Leafs go up 2-0. Then the Florida Panthers win the next 3 games, absolutely lay a goose egg in Game 5 and in Game 7. And that's all that matters to me. Yes, they went 7 games with the defending champs, but it's the style in which they lost the 2 games at home. That's really what it comes down to. Yes, Game 6 was a defensive masterclass. Austin Matthews stepped up in a big way, but the core 4 only had 1 goal and 1 assist in those final 3 games. It's simply unacceptable. If they lost in overtime in that Game 7, not saying there shouldn't have been changes, but you could at least somewhat convince me. If Mitch Marner takes a discount, you bring him back. I'm at the point where it's just simply unacceptable for this Toronto Maple Leafs team. The deadline acquisitions that Brad Treliving brought in were disastrous in that series. 0 points, and we're like a -8 all together in that Florida Panthers series. It's just the worst fears came true when they could have potentially either went up 3-2 or won the series. They laid a complete goose egg. What was your thoughts on the series?
My thoughts honestly are Toronto played better than most people will give them credit for. You can say it doesn't matter in the end because they lost, which is fair enough, but they didn't have a bad series. Marchand, Lundell, Listerinen was the best line in the series. Other than that, most of the Florida Panthers' top players were just okay. They were reasonably.
You want the stats on the
well.
third lines? 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points in 7 games for the Florida Panthers line. 0 goals, 2 assists, 2 points for Lorenz Lawton and Yarn Croc.
Oh,
So,
Scott
yeah.
Lawton was the worst player in the
That is a night
series.
and day.
So definitely that trade looks very bad in hindsight.
Danny Briere cooking.
But the facts that, Toronto lost in the end and Marchand lit them up and the core four struggled, it's going to cause people to overlook some things. Like Matt Tkachuk didn't score a goal the entire series. Barkov was just
Florida,
okay.
man.
Bennett was pretty poor, honestly, in the series. Like Toronto, as far as game planning to limit Florida's top guys offensively, did a pretty decent job. Wasn't good enough to win the series, but like overall, the process I think was okay. Bobrovsky only had a .902 save percentage in the series, so he was definitely beatable.
In those final 3 games, locked the hell in, though.
Raises questions about why Toronto couldn't beat him, frankly. I do agree that you need to let Marner and Tavares walk. I feel that I think the cultural reset of it all has more value than the value you get from either of them on ice. I think that letting Tavares go somewhere else as a maybe symbolic way to move the team forward, get some new voices in the locker room, because it's hard to speak out in locker rooms. You don't know what goes on there, but it feels pretty safe to say from media reports, Austin Matthews is not a leader.
Too many passengers.
Anyway.
That's what he said. Too many passengers.
And you know what's
he
funny?
was one of them.
You know what's funny about that quote is you're not supposed to say it, but it's literally true. And like, it's not even a bad thing. That's just kind of how building a hockey team works when you have that sort of a cap structure. I mean, Edmonton right now is in the Final Four. Very well could win the Stanley Cup this year. That's a team with 2 bus drivers and plenty of passengers.
I'd say that their depth has showed up this year.
That's a team with every forward on that team, other than McDavid and Draisaitl, is a passenger, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing because everyone seems to be on the same page in the locker room. Everyone knows their role and is working to help each other. B, the passengers, those complementary pieces, are really good fits together with those top guys. So you can do it. You can build a winning team by spending a lot of money on just a few guys at the top and having the rest of the team be passengers. Passengers doesn't have to be an insult in that way. Austin Matthews saying it about his own teammates is totally unhinged and makes it seem like an insult. But like by definition, that's kind of how Toronto has to be right now, right? The problem is Matthews not driving is the issue there.
Yeah, the problem is that they're asleep at the wheel. When looking at Matthews in this series, to score 1 goal is just simply unacceptable. Yes, it was a big goal to potentially force Game 7, but in that Game 7, when you get outshot, shot attempts 21-0 to start, and you get completely caved in the second round on Tavares. It's tough because I think if he's willing to take something like $5 million for 4 seasons, I do agree that the cultural reset would be important, but I think you can't really pass up that value. And I know he doesn't show up in the second round of playoffs. I know he doesn't show up games 5 through 7, but I wouldn't hate John Tavares at a certain discount because at the end of the day, in the regular season, you're not going to get that kind of value from someone on the unrestricted free agency market. Jesus Christ, what these guys are going to get this summer is going to be next level. John Tavares still is a damn good second-line center in the regular season. You're going to have to eventually push him down probably to third-line center come playoff time. You're going to have to spend some money, whether that's Sam Bennett or someone else is definitely to be determined. But Marner's got to be gone. Marner for sure has to be gone when looking at the fact he has 0 goals, 7 assists, 7 points in like 20 or 21 careers, 5 through 7. It's simply unacceptable. And especially when you have a guy like Matthew Knies that has made himself so much money this season, he's going to be looking at a long-term deal at $8.75 million. And he actually does drive the bus when it comes playoff time and runs the fuck over people. Unfortunately, he did get hurt in that Game 6. So come Game 7, he just was kind of ineffective out there, but he was still better than the depth that they have within their bottom 6. But yeah, I think in this series, it was a prime example of just the lack of Maple Leafs depth. Although Max Domi played really good, once that top 6 goes blank, there's really nothing, like we talked about with that third line. So they need to spread the wealth more. They need to let Marner walk his $13 million that you were apparently willing to offer him, the biggest contract in Maple Leafs history. You need to spread that out better throughout the team. Unfortunately, Morgan Riley has a no movement clause, so he's not going anywhere. He's on a pretty bad contract at $7.5 million. You're not acquiring a number 1 this summer as well, speaking to what we were talking about the LA Kings. That's just not really out there this summer. So the play is just clearly let Marner walk, maybe let Tavares walk if he wants to get greedy, and then just bring in the aggregate of 3 to 4 forwards to kind of fill that void. And if Matthews and Nylander can't step up in the next couple years, then maybe you fucking nuke it at that point if they just continue to choke. But there needs to be change, and I think there will be in terms of Marner.
Yeah, I think letting both walk and just accepting that next year is going to be a bit of a retooling season is in the best overall interest of the franchise. I'm not saying there's any reason to overreact. I figure if you let Marner and Tavares walk and replace them both, you're not going to find equal production on the free agent market. You're just not. They're going to downgrade their forward group for sure next year. It will be worse than it was
in the regular
this year
season,
in the regular season.
But in the playoffs, it really can't get much worse.
No, I mean, I think just letting them walk, doing a culture reset, get new leaders, new captain, more character guys, and just accept okay, the team next year is just going to be iffy. And they'll still be a playoff team, but probably not one picked by anyone to win a round if you let both walk and don't really come up with great replacements. And just say okay, we're going to accept just being a first round out next year because we need the cultural reset of a retool year. If you keep Tavares, I feel that's captain, it's all the same thing, right? You're just going to replace Marner with worse forwards, otherwise not change anything about team structure, about leadership, locker room dynamics, and I don't really expect much to change. I mean, there frankly isn't anyone out there in free agency who can even come close to replicating Marner, and I'm not going to do this, in the regular season, sure, but in the playoffs, I don't know. I'm sure someone in Toronto media is out there writing fan fiction right now about how giving Sam Bennett an 8-year, $11.5 million contract to get tougher for the playoffs is actually a genius move. But no, Sam Bennett is not a better player than Mitch Marner. You're not going to find a 1-for-1 Marner replacement out there this season. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, the thing with Bennett is he just thrives in the Paul Maurice system with the line mates that he has. If you throw him in Toronto and he has, I don't even know who the hell would be on his wing on that second line, it will not be nearly the same. I guess he would be playing with William Nylander, but he would not have the same success if you just plopped him in Toronto. He is the perfect Florida Panther. They're talking about replacing getting Bennett and Marchand instead of Marner and Tavares. First off, you're not ready for that Bennett contract, how big it's going to be. Second off, I don't think Marchand's going to end up going to the Toronto Maple Leafs unless you absolutely give him a bag, which he might be worth after this Florida Panthers series. But I think you just got to set a hard cap at the Tavares situation. 4 years, $5.25 million, or 3 years. That's fair because that is third line center money.
It's an outstanding contract if you get that. I think that no matter how valuable Tavares is at scoring goals on the ice, that the overall need for change is going to outweigh that.
I think it would, signing Tavares, there would be some kind of a culture change in terms of guys willing to take less to win. I know on the ice he was the former captain, but what is the main problem with this core four? It's obviously playoff success, but the second biggest problem is that they all fight for every single penny. And John Tavares actually did take less to come to Toronto, first off. But if he says, I'm willing to take a 3x5 because I believe in this core, I believe that we can build if we take less, that does matter. When Matthews, rightfully so, won at 13.25. When William Nylander signed an 11.5 before he even had a season over 85 points. From that perspective, it would be somewhat of a culture change.
I want to jump in on Nylander because you convinced me, because now I'm thinking about this. Nylander's first real contract, it seemed like he did take a discount. This time it came for the big boy extension.
His first contract? Oh, I would actually disagree. He waited. He demanded everything. He didn't sign till November 30th, the last deadline. He sat out a quarter of the season. It turned out to be an amazing contract, but at the time he was only a 60-point guy.
I guess the way I'm looking at it is Nylander to me seems like a guy who could have ended up making more money, right?
You could have taken a shorter-term deal, I guess.
There. And then once you see Marner and Matthews fight for any penny, it encourages Nylander with the long term to say, okay, there's no way. Why would I take a discount if the other guys aren't going to take a discount? I need every dollar.
Yeah, definitely. With Nylander, yeah, he got paid a decent amount, and in the moment, people thought it was an overpay. But once, yeah, he quickly became worth that deal after his first horrible season because he sat out for 2 months. But he eventually became worth that. And then once Marner got 10.9 off his ELC, once Matthews got 11.6 or whatever it was, then yeah, Nylander was like, I am cashing the hell in. I'm going north of basically both of them. Well, actually, Matthews is a little bit less. But yeah, from the culture perspective, someone needs to buy in. And I think to a degree, John Tavares taking significantly less than market value. Because on the market value, like somebody would give him some Stamkos $8 million, 4 or 5 years. Because at the end of the day, this guy did have 36 goals and like 34 assists in 70 games or something like that. Like he was a baller in the regular season. And I think with John Tavares, he actually will age pretty good because he doesn't rely on skating. He's actually like one of the worst skating superstars of the 2010s. So I think he's actually going to age pretty well, but it has to be for a discount. If they sign Tavares tomorrow to a 5 by 6.5, I'm gonna be like, it's over. Like it is over. It is going to be a disaster. They're re-signing Marner. Like this team is completely cooked. But I think Tavares needs to buy in, or else you kick him to the curb. I don't think that if it's a 4 by 5.5 on the table in your situation, just for the culture change, I think you sign him for that. I don't think you say we need a complete fresh start. Mitch Marner, the hometown kid, the hometown hero, leaving, I think is enough of a wake-up call to Matthews and Nylander.
And I fully expect Mitch Marner to play pretty well wherever he goes.
Oh, he's going to be a demon on the Islanders. Lock it in.
I think that the Toronto's playoff struggles are kind of a systemic issue that
don't say the media. Don't say the media. Don't say the media. You see that how Florida was pitying them, being like, "Oh,
it was ridiculous." Yeah, no, it's not.
Let me dive into this, dude. Like again, looking at other sports, even in America, some fans are ruthless. You look at European football; it is. People will harass you on the street, attack you, basically, if you don't perform in these certain situations. Give me a break with that, man. And I think Montreal, if they're far more ravenous than the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you run it back for the past 3 or 4 seasons, and people still show up in droves and pay that amount of money. Like, miss me with the fucking media. It's absolute horseshit. I just had to get that off.
No, it's not Toronto fans' fault. Toronto media is like genuinely stupid in a way that few sports media
they gotta get their clicks.
Toronto fans have high expectations, which they should. They voice their disappointment when the team underperforms, which they should. It's not that Toronto is playing badly because the fans are too mean. Although I'm just saying, though, I do think Toronto's playoff issues are kind of like an overall thing, a system thing, a culture thing, an environment thing. And
because
think
there's been no changes. They've just ran it back every single season. So why would you think that anything's different?
I do think Mitch Marner can excel in the playoffs anywhere else. If LA trades someone out for cap space and signs Mitch Marner, I wouldn't be surprised if Mitch Marner actually plays really well in the playoffs in LA and people act all surprised. What? I thought Mitch Marner was a playoff choker. Well, he was until he wasn't, right? He got to a different environment, new players around him, different locker room. He could be very good there. Yeah,
I really believe it is a systemic thing with Toronto just because they have been pampered. They do, as Mitch Marner says, get treated like gods when they have this regular season success. But I think it is finally coming crashing down in terms of they obviously let Brendan Shanahan go, a decision that probably should have made 2 to 3 years ago. And now we are actually going to see change in Leafs land. Okay, moving on from the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're not going to spend as much time on the other second-round matchups in this one. Carolina versus Washington. Carolina ends up winning it in 5 games. A pretty goddamn boring series. Carolina just dominated them. Washington played right into their system in terms of choking the life out of them, just keeping the possession in the Carolina offensive zone. When looking at it, 19 shots per game for the Washington Capitals in this series. It was astonishing. A great defensive effort by Carolina. They averaged 27 shots on goal in the regular season. Logan Thompson made it somewhat of a series to start. He really stood on his head in those first 2 games. But then the floodgates finally opened in Game 3 when they won 4-0. And yeah, it was an impressive win by Carolina. Again, I think we're on the same page. Washington, a good team. But not the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Legit contender in this series. No Capitals player had more than 2 points. Everybody kind of ghosted. There's really nothing to really pick apart with Washington outside of the fact that they're good. They definitely have a long way to go. in terms of becoming a contender. They should be a good team yet again next season. I don't think they're going to be the number one team in the Eastern Conference, but it's still a massively successful season. There's just certain levels to this, and at the end of the day, they do lack that serious difference maker offensively. Ovechkin, if he has a great playmaker at his age, can score a shit ton of goals, but is Dylan Strome a legit number one center on a true contender in the Eastern Conference? I tend to think not. John Carlson's still a good defenseman, maybe not a legit number one. So yeah, Washington, I really like them going forward, but Carolina just showed that if you don't have star talent to potentially beat them, like maybe the Florida Panthers, you're probably coming up short unless you can have serious difference makers.
Yeah, I mean, it's, this was a great season for Washington. Are they a good team? Yes, they always were. Are they an amazing team? No, they never were. This was a bunch of guys having career years, which worked out for the number one seed in the playoffs. Made the second round, got dominated by a better team and a more experienced team, and that's fine, right? I mean, basically, no one in hockey wins the Stanley Cup in their first bite at the apple.
Yes.
This was the first genuine season of this core, and this like kind of reassembled core, right? It's even from last year where they made the playoffs in an embarrassing 8
They actually
seed.
stunk then.
Yeah. They added in like 3 or 4 brand new impact players. McMichael feels like he counts as a new impact player with how little playing time he got. Same with Protas. What should Washington do about this? Absolutely nothing. They're a good team. Most of their current core is very young. Ovechkin and Carlson are the main exceptions, obviously, but you do have in-house players. I'm not saying Ryan Leonard, his peak will match Ovechkin. It won't, but he's very young. He's very good, I think. That's a guy for a while. Can Cole Hudson's peak be John Carlson's peak?
Friend of the show, Cole Hudson.
Probably not. Love you, man. Probably not reaching that peak, but he doesn't have to. He's young. He's going to be a very good player for a long time. Just keep staying the course. I don't think Washington will be a serious contender next year, but they should be a safe playoff team. Just kind of keep everything level, see what builds, what guys develop next year, and then maybe 2 years from now is when you really make the win now move.
Yeah, so I talked about this when I made my YouTube video, kind of just going over these teams. Next year is going to be Ovechkin's final season, and I fear that they might do yet another big kind of off season to try to go win it then. I think you just see what you have. Because there's a chance that they're not a playoff team next year, if we're going to be brutally honest. So I think you just run it back with this core. If at next deadline you're in the mix, then maybe throw a first-round pick, throw a prospect to go try to win with Ovechkin. This year at the deadline, Chris Patrick kind of admitted, I don't know how legit this team is. I'm just going to trade a second-round pick for Anthony Beauvillier, and if we end up going on a deep run, great. If not, I kind of have my answer. So I think, as you mentioned, maybe bring in some depth pieces. They don't have a ton of cap space. I think actually if they're going to re-sign Mangiapane and Beauvillier, they might have no cap space in Lars Ehlers. So just run it back, chill, hope that Leonard takes a big step, hope Cole Hudson dominates the NCAAs. Andrew Crystal should be at the AHL level at least next season. Ilya Protas looks very promising. Just run it back, chill. If you're in the playoffs, great. And then the following season, once Ovechkin departs, once you have that $9.5 million off the books, then you get a little bit creative. Then maybe you swing. If Buffalo has another horrible season, you bring in a Tage Thompson, or some other team decides we're going to nuclear blow it up and try to get that true difference maker. Because even though I do like their prospects a lot, I'm not sure that even any of their prospects have top 25 in the NHL kind of potential. So eventually down the line, they're going to have to do some kind of big swing, but it shouldn't be this offseason until they fully know what they have with this core.
Yeah, fully agree there. It's also worth saying, I mean, like we said a couple times already, there's really, even if you wanted to take a giant swing, other than signing Mitch Marner as a free agent, there's really not any like available seeming, and they wouldn't. A, they shouldn't. There's no reason for them to. B, they don't have the cap space without destroying their team, which would be dumb. But just as far as like, is there a second high impact player in free agency, like a true superstar? Doesn't look like it to me. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Is there a true superstar high impact available for trade this summer? There could end up being one, but right now there's no swirling reports of it. So it's another reason you're really just better off, staying the course, seeing who takes the next step in this upcoming season. If you lose in the first or second round of the playoffs next year, that's fine. It's not really a step backwards. It's just this core getting a feel for what they really have. And then you look at the long-term thing. I want to talk a little bit too about Carolina in this series, because I think that the way Carolina plays defense causes people to not give enough credit to Freddie Anderson. Freddie Anderson had a .937 save percentage in this series. His goals saved above expected, best of any Eastern Conference goalie in these playoffs. He's been really good throughout. That said, it's the same issue we constantly see with Carolina, where against teams that don't have the high-end superstar forward talent, they are very good at suffocating you defensively.
Let's wait until we get to the Florida Panthers series before I'll have a lot to say about the Carolina Hurricanes there. But yeah, we're on the same page with the Washington Capitals. Let's move on to the next series. Jets versus Stars. This started out the first 4 games. It looked like the Jets were just the Stars were absolutely taking care of business off the backs of 2 Finnish hat tricks with Rantanen in Game 1 and Granlund in Game 4. They looked kind of lifeless in that Game 4. Showed up in a big way in Game 5 to get the win. I was in attendance. It was awesome to see them. They played arguably their best game of the entire season. They completely dominated through and through. And then in Game 6, it was kind of a toss-up. It was a pretty interesting game. Mason Appleton has to score that goal. We're talking about a Game 7, and maybe Winnipeg wins a Game 7. If he scores that, brutal. Ottinger did make a solid save, but it was more so on Mason Appleton. Hellebuck did play good in the final 2 games, but overall in the series, I think he still had like an .885, which was an improvement compared to the St. Louis Blues series. But he still wasn't good enough for the Winnipeg Jets. I think that the final 2 games of the series definitely empowers you to think that this core could be a threat in the Western Conference. Don't think there'll be a Dallas. Don't think there'll be an Edmonton anytime soon. But there is hope. The St. Louis series was kind of a disaster at times and made you really concerned. If Cole Perfetti doesn't score that goal with 2 seconds left, we're talking about maybe blowing up the entire team to a degree or serious changes. It's tough with Ehlers. He was very good in this series, but historically has not been that good in the playoffs. 21 points in 45 career playoff games is not going to cut it. I wouldn't hate the idea of moving off him, especially considering Arneal doesn't tend to play him that much. He only plays 15 to 6 minutes. I think he should be playing more. Let me say that. I think he should be playing more. I think he is a damn good player and worthy of $8.5 million or something like that. But if you're Winnipeg, if you're Cheveldayoff and Arneal says that, like, yeah, I just don't really trust him in these situations to a degree. I play him the same amount as like an Adam Lowry. Cole Perfetti also should be playing more. But if Velarde's playing 2-3 minutes more in a series than Ehlers, I can understand them saying this money is better spent within the bottom 6. Because similarly to a Toronto Maple Leafs, the Winnipeg Jets did not get a lot of depth scoring in this series. It starts with guys like Brendan Tanev that they paid a 2nd-round pick to get. We can talk about the deadline that they had, just not nearly enough in terms of taking swings. But yeah, it's going to be a very big. I expect Sandberg, Velarde to re-sign. It really just comes down to Ehlers, and I wouldn't hate them letting him walk. They probably should have traded him this last summer if they didn't get good indications in terms of him re-signing.
That's number one note on the Jets this series is minutes. Nikolai Ehlers was their leading goal scorer in this series. And
16 minutes.
They don't play him.
Yeah, it's weird.
Adam Lowry played more minutes than Nikolai Ehlers. Nemesnikov played more minutes than Cole Perfetti. Yeah. What are we doing here? When you talk about their bottom 6, is Ehlers in their bottom 6? Because some nights in the playoffs, by minutes, he literally is.
In Game 6, it was like I think the Game 6 was like Perfetti played like 12:39 and Ehlers played like 14:30. Nemestikov played like I think Appleton even played more. It was ridiculous.
I mean, he was nearly a point per game player this regular season. Ehlers was in less than 16 minutes. Mm-hmm. For his sake, I hope he doesn't re-sign in Winnipeg, because there are teams he could go to where he's playing 18 to 20 minutes a night. He's going to score 80 points, and people are going to act like so surprised that he's having this offensive outburst, when in reality, it's just like this is always his scoring pace. He was just on a team that refused to play him top minutes. Are there non-offensive issues? Sure, but there also are with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, right? There's a lot of issues with Winnipeg's top players just don't really do anything in their own zone. They're very poor there. It's not a very balanced team in that way, because all of their top scorers have that same issue. I don't think Winnipeg can replace Ehlers' scoring if he does leave with any other free agent option. I mean, he's probably the second best forward on the market this summer, right?
Yeah, pretty clearly.
Yeah, it's
Or at least regular season wise, you could argue you'd rather have Sam Bennett in a series compared to Ehlers.
like if you let Ehlers walk and your big plan for what do you do with the rest of the team is just give raises to Velarde and your other current guys.
They would have around whatever Ehlers leaves for. They would have roughly that amount in salary cap. Like they have around $24 million. I think for me, I think you got to address the second line center position. Not saying Nemestikov was apocalyptically bad come playoff time, but they're just not winning with Vlad Nemestikov as their number 2 center. Not saying I'd love a Brock Nelson deal for like most teams, but I think in Winnipeg, that could make sense. He's not that much older than Scheifele or Hellebuck. So I think from that angle, getting a legit second line center, getting a $3 to $4 million winger for your third line, it could make sense. Again, for the regular season, it probably wouldn't be as good, but come playoff time, you could maybe make that argument. And I am a very pro Nikolai Ehlers guy.
Yeah,
let me just say.
I mean, definitely with Nemesnikov, an upgrade there would be helpful. I mean, it's how many teams have tried Nemesnikov as a middle six center and got mediocre results? I mean, there's a reason he keeps getting passed around the league the way he does. Like he's good enough to have in the lineup. You know, it's not like he's unplayably bad like Scott Lawton was. He's not going to be unplayably bad for you, but if he's in your top 6, you're not a serious contender. That being said, if Connor Hellebuck is as good in the playoffs as he is in the regular season, they easily could have won this series, frankly. I mean, did Dallas play amazingly? Did Dallas constantly blow them away? Not really. Mikko Rantanen was amazing. The rest of Dallas, honestly, Winnipeg did a pretty good job game planning, limiting the rest of their top guys. I talked before about Matt Tkachuk being limited. Jason Robertson had 1 point in this series. It was a secondary assist on a power play. Like, Jason Robertson did nothing here. Winnipeg has their defensemen. It's a very good system for shutting down
Thomas Harley
players.
was awesome. Thomas Harley was awesome, and that Finnish first line has just tore it up in the playoffs. They've been dominant.
The Finnish line, it's a similar-ish thing with Florida's Marchand line, where the Finnish line for Dallas has been amazing, but once you move those guys over there, the rest of the team really doesn't look all that great. Robertson can't seem to find his groove without Hintz next to him. Ben and Sagan are very much looking their age in these playoffs.
Wyatt Johnston has been a little bit underwhelming.
He's been extremely underwhelming. Wyatt Johnston is a -13 in the playoffs.
Yeah, like plus minus not a good stat when it's
when you're a
bad.
-13.
Something is not going right. And
on
we'll
a
talk
team
about
that's won more games than they've lost, you're a -13. That's absurd. Just really my point here is like this was not a case of Dallas is this loaded, ultra deep super team the way some people have been talking about Dallas. The reality is Dallas was beatable, and in this series, Otter had nearly a .930 save percentage. If Hellebuck's having that same .920 something save percentage, we easily could be talking about how Winnipeg won this series in 5 or 6 games. You know, Rantanen by himself stealing 1, but otherwise, no, this was a beatable team if Hellebuck's at his top game.
If Hellebuck's at his top game, and if Cheveldayoff doesn't spend 2 second-round picks and a 4th-round pick on a 4th liner and a 3rd pair, pretty bad defensive defenseman.
Brandon Tennant's
that's
straight up.
And I get what Winnipeg said. Like last year, they went all in and it didn't work. This team was better than last year's team. No shit, they won the President's Trophy, but they were far deeper, especially with the emergence of a guy like Dylan Sandberg. So the fact that he was afraid to do absolutely nothing. I'm not saying like Tampa Bay it and trade 2 first-round picks, a second, and a bunch of shit like that. But the fact that they just pussied kind of at the deadline in terms of not adding any depth scoring. When you were going in with Nemestikov as your number 2 center and a severe lack of depth, like this year's team with Monahan, with Toffoli, maybe it goes different. Maybe it goes different considering the fact that Game 6 was an overtime game. And even when they lost, like those games are relatively close. There was one game where it was 5-2, but because of the kicked goal or whatever, like that completely changed the momentum. That was a very close game. So when looking at it, I think Cheveldayoff should take a lot of shit, which is ridiculous that he was nominated for the Jim Gregory after doing nothing at the deadline. So yeah, that's just the difference. And you look at the teams that are alive right now. Carolina, I know didn't do much at the deadline. Actually, probably got worse when you look at Natchez for Stankoven and future picks. We could say that. But Florida goes out and gets Seth Jones, Brad Marchand. Edmonton gets Jake Wallman, who's been a big piece of their success. Trent Frederick, not as much, but still added. And the Dallas Stars, of course, got Granlund, got Rantanen. They traded 3 first-round picks to go all in. So not to boil it down, it's Hellebuck, it's the ice time, but it's also the stark differences of trade deadlines. You talk about a game one, Mikko Rantanen completely took over that game. Could have easily went Winnipeg's way. So yeah, I think if I'm a Winnipeg fan, I'm optimistic considering you showed life in those final 2 games, but I'm also fucking pissed that we did not do more at the deadline compared to even last year where we did. Even last year, there was such a need for the defense because Sandberg had not broken out at that point. The offense wasn't really the problem. It was the defense score. And then they got absolutely caved in by the Colorado Avalanche. So yeah, very frustrating.
It's just it sounds regressive, but I really do put this all on Hellebuck. Like either Hellebuck is as good as he is in the regular season, and you not making those forward adds doesn't really matter. You could have won the series without any deadline acquisitions, or Hellebuck is going to single-handedly lose you playoff games. In which case, trading a first for whoever probably wouldn't have made a huge difference.
And I mean, his overall stats weren't horrible in this series, but it's just game 1, 3, 4. He didn't play good. Not that he single-handedly lost the game, but yeah, game 2 had a shutout. Game 5 played good. Great. Game 6 played good as well, but it's consistency. I'm not expecting Stuart Skinner. One night he gets a shutout. One night he has an 8-20 or something like that. He just simply was not consistent enough in this series. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a transformative to a degree potentially for Winnipeg this summer, this offseason. And but I think that this season still was a success for them, considering we thought last year they were a little bit fake.
Definitely a success. It's just, we talk about, Auston Matthews is out here losing games for the Leafs, and the main narrative is how much of a playoff choker he is.
I think people did give Hellebuck shit.
In the first round, for sure, people were saying that about Hellebuck, but, it's...
Well, yeah, he was apocalyptically
He was the main reason that they lost
the road
in this
games,
series.
yeah. Oh.
In this series, even. I think he's the main reason why they lost. I mean, he won the one game single-handedly, great stuff. He also lost them games where Winnipeg feels like they outplayed Dallas, and Hellebuck got 4 goals put on him, and they lose.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. You want to move on to Edmonton versus Vegas, the final second-round matchup?
This one's really quick. I'll jump in first here.
Sure.
The Vegas Golden Knights scored 10 goals in 5 games to a team that didn't have Ekholm playing. Just no offense, no life.
And had a cold Stuart Skinner enter the series and completely fucking shut them down.
Vegas was outshot 150 to 120 in the series. Shea Theodore had no even strength points. I mean, it's funny when people are talking about, is Stuart Skinner actually good now because he had a couple good games mixed in there? I don't think so. I think Vegas just watched their entire team collapse. Everyone got cold at the exact same time. No signs of life from anyone. There was no, Stone or Eichel putting the team on their back, giving a spark, even one clutch goal late to try and revitalize the rest of the team. Just a totally lifeless performance from Vegas.
Yeah, and I think you kind of shout out Edmonton's depth, but McDavid and Draisaitl only had 12 points and 3 goals in the series. Corey Perry, 3 goals, 4 assists. Evander Kane, 2 goals, 2 assists. Podkolzin and Brown had 2 points each. Their depth rose to the occasion to a degree. Draisaitl was told more so of a checking defensive mindset in this series. Shut down Eichel and Stone, and the series is basically won for the Edmonton Oilers, and they did exactly that. And I'll give you some props on this. Adin Hill, not very good in the series when looking at him having an 893 after already having kind of a stinker in the Minnesota Wild series. So yeah, for Vegas going forward, I trust that they will do something crazy, and they should do something crazy in terms of shifting around this forward core, because it is just simply unacceptable to score 10 goals in 5 games for the Vegas Golden Knights. It would require probably moving off William Karlsson or something and attaching assets to him, but something has to change for this Vegas Golden Knights team, because I know it's only been 2 seasons since they won the Stanley Cup, but this ownership, this management, they don't give a fuck. They'll trade you in an instant. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see Vegas, what they could potentially pull off. I wouldn't be shocked if they somehow got a Mitch Marner.
No, I wouldn't either, honestly.
I threw it out there, trade
Pietrangelo,
right.
Use that cap space for Marner. I had the same thought.
Yeah, it's
it seems
it
like
could be
for
crazy.
them, it's realistic that you could try that.
Yeah, I kind of want to see that. I put him 9th on my where I want to see Marner go. It would be so, because Marner would immediately become a beast. He no doubt would get unlocked, but they kind of need that third serious offensive force. I really like Carlson. Hurdle did have a good regular season, but they don't really have that third difference maker within their forward court. And obviously, you're going to put Stone and Eichel together. They have fantastic chemistry, but outside of that, they really don't have it anymore compared to seasons past where they really had depth throughout the lineup. That wasn't the case this year, and as a result, the offense went dry, and Stewart's going to shut them out in back-to-back games.
Yeah, I mean, it's in theory, the difference maker is supposed to be coming from the blue line, right? Like between Pietrangelo and Theodore in the aggregate, you have a star offensive player there. Yeah. Those guys did not produce offensively at all. It's probably time, if it's possible, it's probably time to move off Pietrangelo.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
He's regressed. Man. He's not worth his cap hit.
The problem is he has a no movement clause. He's from Toronto. I think that he would waive to go to Toronto, especially if they kind of nudged him out, being like, you better fucking go or else we're going to play you less or something like that. What actual hard-ass teams do compared to some other situations. The no movement clause would be tough. They'd have to trade him to some kind of contender. It's not like you can dump him to some dog shit team. But as you mentioned, at $8.8 million at this stage in his career,
he's just not worth it.
He just isn't worth it. Like He's a Vegas Golden Knights legend. Might get his number retired there one day. I don't know how many guys are going to retire from those teams, but it's come and gone. He's washed up. He just can't keep up with guys like McDavid and Draisaitl at this point. Great career, but they need to do something.
Yeah, I mean, if Pietrangelo is making $4 million, he's playing on the second pair, sometimes third pair. You'd be like, this is a pretty great player. Good for what his role is. He's not equipped right now for what his role is.
Yeah, definitely. You want to move on to the conference finals?
Let's do it.
Okay, so moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, as you can see here, the Corsi Canes. The Corsi Canes have just gotten completely shut out by the Florida Panthers. And yeah, I've not saying I thought this team was completely fugazi. I had them in the Eastern Conference Finals, but it is ridiculous how people just ignored the constant problems with this team. Yes, they dominate possession against inferior opponents, but even against inferior opponents, they're putting low danger shots on net from the outside. They do not have the finishing talent at the end of the day to win the Stanley Cup right now. They're a good team. They can make their conference finals and all that. Funny enough, I did predict them to make the Eastern Conference Finals, but then lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning in 4 games. So I had a Florida team sweeping the Carolina Hurricanes in the finals. But with Washington, with New Jersey, I think we can just say it. It's one of the easiest paths to a conference finals we've maybe ever seen in NHL history. Like, I'm still saying Capitals are a good team, but probably a 102-point team. The Devils team, if that
worst team in the playoffs,
if that Devils team played 82 games, they might have had 82 points given their injuries within that series. So yeah, their system works against far inferior opponents, but when they have these teams that match their physicality or exceed their physicality, like the Florida Panthers, it's just absolutely domination from the Florida Panthers in this series. And even last night, or was it 2 nights ago at this point, they only mustered up, I think, 17 shots. So they're not even dominating in terms of offensive zone possession and shots right now. They have absolutely nothing going. Svechnikov dominated the weaker competition, non-existent, if anything, a liability out there right now. So yeah, with Carolina, it's all their biggest fear is coming to actual action, and it's just it's not shocking the least to me. This is who the Carolina Hurricanes are right now. This was supposed to be a retool year. That's the thing. Like, I'm not even trying to shit on them. The fact that everybody thought, oh, this year's different. Oh, Carolina's actually going to go on a deep Stanley Cup run, when we knew what the underlying numbers were, that they in previous years they had the same underlying numbers, but just weren't able to get over the hump once they faced actual good goaltending. Yeah, the media tried to gaslight you into the fact that they were a legit team and they were a good team and they were a fun team, when neither were true. They have a lot of money this summer. They can make big changes. I saw people saying, like, Sebastian Aho is going to get traded. They're going to blow up the court. That's ridiculous. This was supposed to be a retooling year, but even by those standards, this is embarrassing what the Florida Panthers are doing to them right now.
It's brutal. I mean, it's the fact is that you could, copy and paste most of those lines for the last 3 seasons in a row, and it's all of the exact same things, right? The Carolina Hurricanes are very good at what they do, but they have some flaws. They don't have high-end offensive difference makers. Frankly, the actual player on ice talent of the D-core right at this minute is not incredible. The system is, the way everyone buys in is, they get incredible defensive results, but the actual guys out there right now, are we really going to pretend that 40-year-old Brent Burns,
washed up,
Orlov, Chatfield, these are not like high-end players. They get high-end results very frequently because that's the system Brind'Amour has built, and he finds a way to make even very bad defensive players work in that system, right? I mean, Tony D, Ghost Despair have fit really well.
Tony D's fitting in the Islanders system.
Somehow they fit very well into that Brind'Amour system. So he can make magic out of low talent, but like this team, the defensive group especially behind Slavin, it's not a high talent group. It's like low to medium talent that's being coached into good results.
Like, I just want to say one thing on Slavin. Like, when you talk about him being a top 5, top 6 defenseman, like some people tried to throw him in, he's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, defensively. In order to be a true championship #1 defenseman, you need more of an offensive game. You just do at the end of the day. You need a guy that can play on the power play. And they need to target some kind of legit, not just Gothisbehere. They need to target some kind of legit offensive defenseman in the next 2 seasons, because I just don't know if they can do it with Slavin and then a pure offense defenseman and Gothisbehere as your best offense defenseman.
Yeah, it's they need to find some.
They're like
sort
the
of an
inverse
upgrade
Toronto
there.
Maple Leafs.
Like it's the concept of having like an extreme offensive defenseman to pair with Slavin. It makes sense as a concept.
Burns in
but you need
2,
a
3
better
years
guy.
ago was
Yeah,
perfect.
you need a better guy to do that with, right? If you have even like current Eric Carlson, Sharks Eric Carlson as the guy you're pairing with him. I wouldn't want Eric Carlson in the future going after another very old guy.
You need
Doesn't
some
seem like it
retention on
fits.
that. You need some decent retention on that.
But yeah, if, you know, like a John Carlson type guy next to Slavin, you could have the best defensive pair in the world. But the guys Slavin gets paired with are just, they're not high talent players. Brent Burns was a high talent player for a long time. Right now, he's just not built for the moment. And it's, like you said, it's not surprising in the least to anyone who's been paying attention. They're very good with that system at suffocating inferior opponents. The Florida Panthers have a bunch of players who can make goals happen out of nothing, and they can't stop that. Interesting you bring up Svechnikov, because otherwise he was having an amazing playoffs and going into this series after having the worst regular season of his career.
He's not this
at
elite
no
winger
point-
after 10 games.
I was really high on everyone was really high on Svechnikov in like his first 2 seasons. In the 4 or 5 years since then, I have no clue how good he actually is, but probably not top line on a true contender good.
Yeah, he's a 65 to 70 point physical guy that should be scoring way more goals than he actually does. One thing that I also just gotta talk about is how people, after they traded Rantanen for Stankoven, people tried to say that they were a better team because Stankoven fit the system, and that could have been true in the regular season because Rantanen wasn't a perfect fit and he only played like 15 games there. But at the end of the day, not saying Dallas can win the Stanley Cup. In fact, at this point, I think they're probably going to lose their series. We'll talk about that shortly. But you need Mikko Rantanens to win Stanley Cups. You need these high-end difference makers, a Rod Brind'Amour system that is focused on just shots from the outside and dominating possession. It's not going to get it done when it matters the most. It just is not. And when they face these high-end teams with a good goaltender that actually has something in front of them, Markstrom, to a degree, kind of shut them down at times, but that was with like a dog shit team. He was not getting the goal support in order to make that an actual series. And Logan Thompson in the first 2 games, it's just tried and true. In 2021, they lost to Vasilevsky because of that. In 2022, they lost to the New York Rangers because it's just Shesterkin. They outplayed the New York Rangers at 5-on-5, including in the 2024 series, and then in 2023 as well. Bobrovsky shut them down. If something has to change, or something in terms of Tulsky getting serious finishing, and I'm not sure that even is out there this summer, because Mitch Marner, although I'd like them to sign Mitch Marner, he don't score
not much
goals.
of a
He knows,
finisher, no.
Ehlers not exactly a dominant goal scorer, so I don't know what they're going to do in terms of. You're not going to fire Rod Brind'Amour because Carolina's a small market team. They like their home playoff games, although they want to win a Stanley Cup. The owner is not going to fire a guy that consistently gets them to an Eastern Conference Finals, consistently gets them another 8 home games or something like that. That's ridiculous in my opinion, especially considering he just signed a massive extension. But something has to change with the approach. I like how Tulsky swung on Rantanen. It didn't work out. We agreed that it was about a net equal total because they weren't winning with Natchez. It's not like they were winning with Natchez. But like something, big changes have to happen this season. I like Seth Jarvis. I like Aho. Very good two-way players. But in terms of having the high-end offensive ceiling to match Florida Panthers, it's just not there.
I do trust Tulsky to figure out something and make it work. I mean, he took
aggressive.
the biggest swing we've seen in a long time to try and get that high-end scoring. When he saw that Rantanen wasn't working, He was able to flip him, try to recoup some assets at least, so it wouldn't be a total failure. They need a Rantanen type player, right? It's people are taking the wrong lesson from it if you're saying a Rantanen type player won't work there. Specifically, Mikko Rantanen, that one player, was a truly bad fit in the system, and I don't think it was going to work with more time. I think he just wasn't a fit there.
I think
they need a Mikko Rantanen type player, right? Yeah. Someone who can do most of the same things as him stylistically, just not that one specific guy. And you're absolutely right about Brind'Amour. Like, you could say his system is the issue offensively, but I think, frankly, the issue offensively is just like the talent, the guys that they have. If you got rid of Brind'Amour and replaced him with a whatever filler retread coach, I think people would realize, wait a second, they're just not a very good offensive team, and now we're starting to see the cracks in the defense where half the minutes that their defensemen play are from like 37-year-olds.
Yeah, and I think something like, again, we didn't do a preview of this series, but I would have picked Florida with ease, especially when you look at the difference of the third lines. We talked about how they had 21 points, 8 goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs, that third line. Carolina's third line is Martinook, Jordan Staal, and Jackson Blake. Jackson Blake, I think, is going to have a very good career, but like that is virtually no offense right now from a guy like Jordan Staal or Jordan Martinook. Like, this forward core was just not nearly on the same level as the Florida Panthers. Not remotely close.
It's not close. Honestly, I think the Panthers are better at every position group, right? The actual defensemen they're out there, they don't limit goals as much as Carolina limits goals and results, but I think purely the players, Florida's defensemen
so
are
much
better.
More offense from their defense
I'm very
core.
confused why Carolina has this Russian who we're gonna put so much effort to get him over to the States for the playoffs.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense.
What's
Scott
happening
Morrow's
there?
Is
he just like? Is he looking that terrible in practices? Like, what's causing Brind'Amour to just not put him in the lineup?
Yeah, got to put him at some point. And just overall, from a stylistic standpoint, the way Florida's defensemen get up on the rush is just like such deep. The amount of time I see Mikkola just up the middle of the ice alongside the forwards, and Carolina just has nothing in terms of matching that. Like, Carolina is just chipping it in, hoping for something, but Florida is such a good defensive team that the second it gets chipped in, one of their defensemen sweeps it out, and then they're already breaking out. Like, it is just night and day in terms of Florida dominating.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be shocked if this goes to 6.
I agree. I think Florida in 4 or 5 at this point. The issue
really
is not that Slavin is your number 1 D. That's not the issue. The issue is that Forsling, Ekblad, Mikkola, and Jones would all be the second best D on Carolina. They just don't have a ton of actual puck-moving talent there, and they need it.
Yeah, it's going to be a transformative offseason. Thankfully, they have like $28 million in only, I believe, Burns, Orlov, Roslovic, and Eric Robinson as free agents. So, like, they're gonna, even if they bring back those
Burns
guys,
and Orlov,
yeah, they're gonna let those
guys
guys walk. Morrow, Nikishin, insert them into the lineup. You re-sign Roslovic and Robinson at a reasonable cap hit, and then you can just go crazy. But again, for what they need, the free agency pool out there right now, not exactly the perfect fit. So it's going to be interesting. Again, this was not expected to be a cup or bust year for the Carolina Hurricanes. It's tough because Gensel, if they had a Gensel right now, if they were able to keep Rantanen, he's got to be able to land one of those legit premier goal scorers, or else I don't know how they're eventually going to get over the hump.
They're not.
Thankfully, they play in the Metro, so they're going to have a bunch of swings at it the next couple of years. I don't see any team really being that until my Islanders really get it together. But, yeah, we're going to finish off with the Dallas versus Edmonton series. I think this one's also pretty cut and dry. Game 1, Edmonton absolutely dominated the first 2 periods. They're the far superior team at 5-on-5. Dallas got some power plays, 3 straight power plays at the start of the 3rd period, took advantage of that, and honestly did kind of turn it around in terms of their 5-on-5 play for the final 14 minutes of that game. But then game 2 was just more of the same. Edmonton, their depth forwards are really stepping up in a big way. Them getting a puck-moving defenseman like Jake Wallman has been such a plus in terms of, instead of relying on guys like Troy Stetcher or Ty Emberson to really transport the puck. It's just been really impressive. Robertson and Johnston keep on ghosting in this series. Meanwhile, I'm noticing guys like Connor Brown or Kasperi Kapanen have a good series for the Edmonton Oilers. Like, Edmonton is just on them, man. The way that they're able to just get through the neutral zone, set up in the offensive zone without having to chip it down has been really impressive. And right now, I'm not saying Dallas is not as dead as Carolina. They obviously won a game, but Dallas really needs to shake things up, maybe jumble some of the lines, because right now Edmonton really has their number, and if Stuart Skinner is going to play like he did in Game 2 compared to even in Game 1, just kind of got unfortunate with the power play. Only I think the Duchesne goal was really his fault. But yeah, you got to be feeling pretty fucking good if you're Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, it's as mentioned earlier, the issue with Dallas's finish line, it's a phenomenal line. That line itself has no issues. The issue is they can't seem to figure out any other way to jumble the rest of their middle six, I guess, and make this work. I mean, in theory, you would absolutely say Dallas has a better top 9 than Edmonton because they go 9 deep with legitimately very good threatening goal scorers. In reality, we're just not seeing any production out of that middle group. Robertson, Johnston, Ben, Sagan all need to be better than they've been. And I feel like they could do it, right? We could be doing a podcast 5 days from now talking about, wow, Dallas is on a heater right now. Because I mean, those guys have the talent that at any point you believe they can just flip the switch, turn it on, make this work. Dallas could win 3 games in a row and take the series. It's possible. They have the talent for it. It's just they're not getting the production out of those guys. I feel like after Dallas loses the series in maybe 6 games, maybe 7 games, we're going to hear reports that Jason Robertson was dealing with a torn ACL and a ruptured spleen, and he lost a lung, and all of these injuries, but such a warrior for powering through it. And we're going to be looking at it like, wow, really? Yeah, we could tell. I mean,
we could have had more Maverick Bork in the lineup or something like that.
He was injured coming into the playoffs, and they
rushed him back.
He seems not healthy. Like he was bad in the beginning of the year, and then really turned it on in the middle and end of the regular season.
He broke his leg, or he had some kind of stress fractures. Like they even rushed him back then. If Jason Robertson is healthy right now, everyone in Dallas should be extremely concerned because on paper, this is like a top 25 player in the NHL. Where is he? What's happening right now? Yeah, it's been crazy. As long as Edmonton can just keep it at 5-on-5 in this series, I think that they're probably going to win it in 6 games just because of what I've seen at 5-on-5 has been so overwhelmingly in Edmonton's favor. In Draisaitl and McDavid. Like the first game, the way that they were able to just build up a full head of steam down the ice without even being touched, like the way that the Dallas Stars have been playing those two in particular, their 2 best players, compared to some other series that we've seen them be able to get stifled, it's just been simply unacceptable for the Dallas Stars, for Pete DeBoer, who I think is one of the best tacticians in the NHL.
Yeah, I trust DeBoer is at least going to try something to figure this out. I don't know. I mean, are Ben and Sagan potentially just like old enough that they're not reliable in this way in the playoffs? It's possible. I mean, I'd like to think that they can turn it around instantly, but maybe it is like, they're really showing their age. Duchesne has looked much better than those two, I feel, but he still hasn't looked as good as he did in the regular season. So I don't know what the solution is here for Dallas, but they need to change things.
And I think Cody Ceci and Labushkin have been a little bit underwhelming, especially Cody
Any
Ceci.
minutes that Ceci or Labushkin play have been disastrous.
Like Jim Nill, he has a strong argument for the Jim Gregory. I would personally give it to Bill Zito. He got the 2 you could say that the 2 forwards that he got were awesome additions. Granlund and Rantanen have really stepped up, but that wasn't their biggest need coming into the playoffs. And I know they made the Western Conference Finals. It's still a successful season to a degree, but the fact that he did not, and there weren't a ton on the market, the fact that he did not address the right-handed defense was pretty goddamn egregious, and we're seeing it right now. Because even Miro Heiskanen isn't 100% right now. He's not struggling the way that Jason Robertson is, but it's been pretty shoddy from Dallas's defense core.
It's been just... I mean, it's a straight up lack of talent there is what it is, right? Harley's great. Heiskanen is great.
It's not even CC playing bad. He's just not that good of a player.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, expecting CC or Labushkin to like show up and do things is asking too much.
Your biggest hope for them is that you don't notice them. Like just not anything positive, but not anything negative. Like that is the ideal Cody Ceci or Labushkin. They're just in the right spot, playing okay.
And I do want to give credit to Edmonton making a meaningful adjustment because Beauchard was playing with Nurse for the entire first round. Really didn't look too good. Playing mostly with Kulak these days, it's been much better results. Even in the games in Vegas,
Kulak with the goal
it was moving Kulak in with Beauchard made a noticeable difference.
Yeah. So yeah, do we got anything else?
Oh, we gone through a lot. I think that's the show.
We will hopefully not take 16 days in between podcasts. Next time, we'll hopefully hit you with like a week or so with a new podcast. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.